It is my pleasure to having such a great guest. His name is Sanjay Sarma. Right now, he is the vice president for the open learning of the MIT, and he's behind of the technologies of the RFID. And also, he has made a lot of studies about the IoT or the Internet of Things. As well, he has an impressive background. I mean, he has a master, he has a PhD, and he has been the recipient for so many awards. But I think that more than anything, I would like to recognize, Sanjay, that you are a great and talented and down-to-earth leader. I think
Thank you.
that is the most important thing above of everything. So tell me, how are you?
I'm doing great, Lutz. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. It was lovely to have you in that class in November at MIT, and really wonderful to connect with you. And these are very strange times. We are all trying to figure out what our humanity is in these times. So it's great to connect with someone like you from quite a distance away, and a nice recollection of what it was like to get together in person.
Thank you so much, Sanjay Sarman. So I think this is going to be a very different interview from those that you have already received. So I hope that you can enjoy it, because it's going to be in the first time about maybe your experience, about your personal life. So for starting, could you please tell us a little bit about your personal story? Where were you born? Where you live? Which were your dreams back in those days?
Yeah, I was born in India 50 something years ago, and I grew up in India. I grew up all over India. I come from a middle class family, but my parents were both my parents very educated, which was good. They were very idealistic growing up. My two great grandfathers were in the Indian freedom movement. They were both followers of Gandhi. Uh, my family, the greatest gift has never been money. It is the fact that going back many generations, people really valued education. So I grew up with that. And I have no siblings, so I was very close to my parents, and I remained very close to my parents. And I went to a school in India, which is hard to get into, the Indian Institute of Technology, IIT. And from there, I met my wife there, by the way. And then from there, I went to work in the oil industry out in Scotland. And then I went to Berkeley. Um, First I went to Carnegie Mellon University, CMU, then Berkeley, and then came to MIT. And at MIT, I've done a bunch of things. I've done a bunch of startups and so on. So it's been quite a journey, And the one thing I will never forget, and I hope, and if I do, Louis, remind me,
Hey,
is that all human beings start the same. When we're babies, we have all our futures, our opportunities in front of us. And who succeeds and who doesn't is determined entirely by society, the circumstances of birth, the opportunities they get. But the babies are all the same dreams and
Sanjay,
same possibilities.
Sanjay, tell me something, because maybe I'm kind of curious about that. Was it your dream always to get to the MIT, or was something that suddenly appeared in your plans?
Um, it was my dream to become a researcher
Okay.
for a very long time, because I feel that this is a great job, because you are a researcher and I'm also a professor. You can invent things, and I always wanted to be an inventor. Now, where I wanted to go, in India, if you ask a child, they'll probably say MIT, top. If you pick 5 schools, MIT would be one of them. Maybe it's the top school. So yeah, maybe I thought MIT. So I'm very, very, very lucky as a human being to be where I am right now. Yeah.
And tell me, for example, forgetting the maybe not a technical challenge, but which was your biggest challenge about the conditions, about maybe to fight to get those dreams? Which was the biggest challenge or the biggest fear that you has to face?
Well, I think our worst enemy, I am lucky that my worst enemy is me. For a lot of people, they have worse enemies than themselves, right?
Okay.
Society,
Yes.
culture, um, war, disease, poverty. Uh, for me, I didn't have those. I was born in a loving family, and I had I was always told I was capable, so I didn't have those. So my worst enemy was me. That's actually a great honor, to be your own worst enemy. But don't kill yourself. That worst enemy, you shouldn't try and make it a deadly enemy. So I had to, we all go through phases. I went through a phase when I was very lazy. I went through a phase when I was not focused. I went through, and it is those things. If you can conquer those, then you have a chance. Society throws up, culture, life throws up a lot of other challenges, but you need to conquer yourself first. And because I didn't have those challenges, although I sort of made mistakes, over time I was able to figure out who I was, and I wouldn't say conquer myself, but that was the biggest battle.
Yeah, I think that you're right. Maybe the first thing that we need to do is to conquer ourselves, as you say, right? Because most of the time, the biggest challenge are inside of us. So yeah. I think that you're completely right. Along this journey, Sanjay, which has been your biggest lesson learned?
Failure. Every failure has been a lesson learned. I failed a few times. Because there are many different ways to fail. And unfortunately, again, others are less fortunate in that failure you can be written off. And I was able to learn from the failure, and I had a second chance. So I would say that I've had 2 or 3 major failures in my life, and each one of them was an incredible learning opportunity. The way I look at it, if you see someone who's blind with a walking stick, and you're walking next to them, and you come to a set of stairs, you can see the stairs and you lift your foot. The blind person's stick hits the stairs. Now, if your foot hit the stairs, you would say you missed something, you made a mistake. But if the blind person's stick hits the stairs, we don't call it a failure. We say that's a learning experience. Mm-hmm. Life, we think we can see. We can't. We're all sort of blind. We will hit steps with the stick, which is, our trying things. And we have to learn from that. Just as a blind person figures out what you can see, you have to figure out what you can't see. So failure to me has been the thing that's shaped me.
So failure, I think that's very, very interesting. Since your point of view, we should see failures as a great opportunity to learn, right?
That's right.
Great.
Failure is how we shape our learning. And the key thing is to not be fearful of failure, number one. And number two, don't failure.
Yes.
Don't lie to yourself, right? Because you almost have to get used to failure, like a blind person with a stick. Mm-hmm. Because as they use a stick, they figure out the map of the area, right?
Yes.
So by definition, every time they hit the wrong thing, you can say it's failure, but they're actually making a map. But you have to do this. You have to fail, now put it in a positive spin. You have to probe the unseen all the time. It has to be a habit. If you don't do that, you're not learning. If you postpone it, eventually you'll fail, but it'll be a much bigger failure.
Yes, you're right, because that is very important. I in my point of view, like to getting out of the comfort zone is kind of similar to that, because sometimes we are like holding ourselves from taking some kind of chances, but at the end, those chances are going to find us. So it's better to put ourselves in those conditions in order to grow. So I think that is a very interesting thought that you have said.
In fact, comfort zones are defined by the false sense that you understand the territories you can see there. So you think you can see there, so you're fine. You stay there.
Yes.
But I'll give you an example. Let's say you're on a job and you're worried about your job. Now, what you should do is look for another job. But then if you have a fear of failure, which is maybe I'll get rejected, and it'll hurt my ego. Right? So I don't want to apply for another job. But eventually your job's going to go away and then you're desperate. That's a much bigger failure than having your ego jabbed a little bit every time you interview and you get maybe you don't get the first 3 interviews, they don't go well, but you're learning, right?
Completely, yes.
So, but the comfort zone is the job, but slowly that's going away. And so that's exactly right. I like the way you put that.
Great. Thank you so much, Sanjay. Tell me, now in the journey about your role as educator, if you have to recall like the top 3 favorite moments, maybe not because they are favorite, but maybe because it gave you a lot of like learning, or if there is just one tough moment in your educator role, what would you pick as your favorite tough moment?
No, I'll do 3 actually. The first is, the 3. The first is, the first course I taught at MIT was a topic that I didn't know very well.
Okay.
And that was the best thing that happened to me.
Why, Sanjay?
Because I had to learn it. And when you learn it, you're much more sympathetic to the students. If you know it, you become arrogant to the students. I had to relearn it. I knew it, but I had forgotten it. I hadn't taught it. So when the students had doubts, etc., I was very conscious of where they were coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways, that's like design thinking. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the user. In my case, the user was the student.
Okay.
And because I had been a user myself, I was much more able to sympathize. So that's that was actually a beautiful moment for me. The second thing is, and this has happened to me many times, so I can pick any one of 1,000 incidents, but when you teach these really smart students, they ask you questions and you have to be open to those questions. Because what the students are able to do, or any individual, when you talk to them, is everyone looks at the same object, but from a different direction, you know?
Yes.
And if you really listen to the questions, you get a 3-dimensional view of your topic.
Okay.
And so that's my second sort of favorite moment, except this moment happens to me a lot. Right? When I'm talking to you, Louis, I'm learning a lot from you about life, about the way you look at things, the way you perspective and so on, right?
Sanjay, when you say that you have like 3 point of views, you are talking about the person who is asking, the person who is receiving the question, okay? And what is the third point of view?
The third point of view, the third sort of interesting thing for me is honesty.
Okay.
Which is being completely as transparent as you can be.
Okay. Yes, it makes totally, yes, it makes sense at all.
So what happened was I was teaching, you asked me about a moment, I was teaching a student something, and he asked me, how do you understand it? And at that moment I said to him, I'm not sure I completely understand it myself.
I think everyone has the same condition, Sanjay.
Yeah, but I was honest with him. And that was so liberating for me. And that was a beautiful moment too.
Yes, you are right. Okay, thank you so much, Sanjay. Okay, regarding about innovation, I think that we can talk a little bit about innovation, which I think is some of your favorite topics. Okay, I remember in some of the first lessons that you say that the only constant is change. And for these days, I think that is the most common condition, because we were saying before that the news, you say that the news is like the weather, because it's changing like every minute. So, and you also said that the people want is to get the job done. So what do you think that has been the industries that has achieved or has solved this current problem? Because as you may saw, for example, the communications problems, which industries has tackled or has solved this problem in a better way?
Yeah, look, first of all, in history, people have always been in a time of change, right? Your ancestors moved here, either they moved from Europe or they're from the Americas. But one way or the other, something changed. It was, it could be a war, it could be disease. We're actually used to, our generation is used to not having change. We got used to it. and then COVID happened, right? And now suddenly we relearn, we are being exposed to change. It's going to change our psyche. What happens in times of change or times of emergency is people go down to the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic, for example, do I like standing in a queue in a shop? No, I don't like standing in queue in a shop. What I want is, if my daughter wants pizza, I want the pizza.
Yes.
I don't like standing in a queue in the shop to pick up the pizza, right?
That's
or
right.
not pizza. Let's say she wants candy. I want the candy. I don't want to stand in a queue in a shop. So what's happened in this world suddenly is that we have gone to that extreme, which is I want candy and I can order it online. It gets delivered. Now, obviously, in an emergency, you don't want candy. You want something else like medicines, basic food, so you can survive. But I think that anything that is online, anything that is delivery, anything that is automatic, anything that is contactless. For example, payments has been going
Yes.
contactless for quite a while, but suddenly it has to be contactless.
Yes.
So suddenly anything that was winning has been accelerated, right?
Totally.
Not everything that's been winning, but most things that are winning have been accelerated. And industries that are agile, that can reshape themselves, they're the ones that are winning. So it's a very fascinating time for us, this moment.
So, for example, in some of the topics, and putting the example that you say that we don't want to make some kind of queue in any kind of like shop. Sometimes we want like something like immediately, and sometimes in some industries it looks like a magic. So, what do you think is going to be the next technology that we need to focus on, no matter in which industry we are working on?
Well, okay, so that's a deep question. I think in this moment of COVID, it has reminded us what matters most. In fact, when you were talking earlier, you talked about your family in Mexico, and
Yes.
you said if they're well, that's all that matters, right? If they're healthy. So I think we've all realized personal health and happiness is the most important.
Yes, you're
The
right.
industries to our personal health and happiness will come out the winners, in my view.
Yes, at the end, I think is summarized to the basic conditions, right? To the basic needs.
Yeah, it's the basic. Also, yes, it's the basic needs. It's stuff that this COVID has also forced us to be with our families.
Mm-hmm.
For those who have families, right?
Yes.
It has really focused us. I think this is really going to shape society. Family time, things like that. It has taken away. COVID has removed some things from our life. We will miss some of the things it's removed, but not miss many of the things it's removed. Right? Like travel,
Yes.
crazy travel. It's not going to come back, right? But
Yes,
I want to hang out with my friends. I would love to meet you personally. So I think this is going to focus us on what really matters to us. And the industries that serve that will do well.
Yes, you're saying very, very rightly, because I think that now we are like remembering which are the core things or the basic things that we need to take care about.
Yep.
And I think that the COVID is teaching us, maybe in a hard way, that condition. Completely right.
In a very hard way.
Yes, I think this is a very extreme condition that, for sure, that no one else could ever imagine, like to live some kind of this condition.
Think of it like nature strikes back.
Yes, completely right. Tell me, Sanjay, you have a book very interesting, and in that book, you say that we need to focus in the customer needs, right? And you talk about the 3 IoTs. Can you remind us which are those 3 IoTs and how, with this COVID, I think that this IoTs is going to be empowered rather than be affected, because as you say, this condition is being like speeding up some kind of like technology, some kind of industries. So what are your insights about this?
Yeah, I actually think that you know, it is about it goes beyond uh, the three aspects um, of IoT. Um, I think what COVID, just I'm picking up on the earlier comment, is it's the internet of humanity almost. It's reminding us of, right? I
Yes,
mean, what we're doing right now is you would have done it the same way,
completely. Yes.
whether pre or post, right? COVID, right? So I think what has happened is that in everything from telemedicine
Mhm.
to online stuff to telecommunications to home delivery,
Yes,
right? To everything, we've sort of reshaped everything around our humanity, you know, and there's nowhere. It's just we just sort of rethought of ourselves in this way, right?
the complete.
So it's actually more than three IoTs. It's one humanity, I think. That's sort of, and the internet of humanity is what's happened here, right?
Yes, I think
It's
that.
like nature came and said, human beings, you're social animals.
Yes,
Let me take social away from you. Doing it. I want to see how you survive.
it is like a big experiment from the nature to us.
That's right. That's right.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, exactly. So we're just responding to that, you know? So, yeah.
Okay, Sanjay. About innovation. Innovation, it is right now. It is like the big subject, the big topic.
Yeah.
What do you think are now those kind of skills that we need to learn? No matter if we are like employees, if we are entrepreneurs, which are those kind of like big skills that we need to learn, like to adapt maybe?
Well, let me ask you a question first. Have you seen the movie Apollo 13? Apollo 13?
Apollo 13, yes, I think I saw it. It is
Yeah,
the one of the astronauts.
that's right. So, do you remember what happens there? That that they're trying to figure out um, how to react once they discover a problem in space, and they have to very quickly adapt, and they have to fix the problem remotely. Remember that?
I don't remember very well, Sanjay.
Okay, let me give you the story. So the story is that um, during Apollo 13, there is um, the astronauts are heading for the moon and they're returning and so on. And there's a problem that they have to that is deadly. You know, these people are going to die,
Yes.
and they have to fix the problem on the ground. So what they do is they create a kit, and in that kit they have the same things that the astronauts have, and they figure out how to solve the problem. And just in the nick of time, they tell the astronauts do this, this, and this, and the astronauts survive. But there's a lot of activity in the ground. Obviously, they don't want to scare them, right? But
Yes.
there's a lot of activity on the ground to get them going. So that's the basic idea of Apollo 13. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So what happens? So the way it happens is that Apollo 13 is happening to us right now, because right now society is suddenly having to manage where nature came and took away our ability to be together. So we are somehow like Apollo 13 trying to figure out how to make life work. What Apollo 13 gave to the world was agile processes, which is
Okay.
forget documentation, forget everything else, just solve the problem.
Hmm.
It's okay if you make a mistake, just solve the problem, right?
Yes.
Because worst case, it doesn't work. Those astronauts are going to die anyway. All you can do now is succeed. So just solve the problem, right? So I think that this little story, this little piece of our history is going to focus us on that principle, which is Apollo 13 like rethinking of problem solving. And when this is finished, we're going to become much better at problem solving. We won't ask crazy questions, create, extra paperwork, bureaucracy. We'll become highly
Yes.
innovative people because of this.
Yes, because we didn't have the time to like to respond to this kind of emergency. We have to like figure out like very quickly how can we put the things together and to move on, right? So
That's right.
yes, I think that's a very good insight and very like comparison, Sanjay.
Yeah, it's going to force us to be like that. We're going to come out of this much more agile because we will always remember this time.
And you say something quite interesting, because it seems like the nature, it is taking the whole humanity and take it out from its comfort zone, as you say. So we need to figure out and we need to find new ways to speed up, but respecting the condition of the nature. I think that is like some kind of the big lesson learned.
That's right. I mean, that's exactly right. The thing is that we're also, by the way, going to be much more respectful of nature, in my view.
Yes, for sure, because we have also seen like the positive sides. From the other side, we have like positive sides, right?
That's right. Yeah,
So
you're going to see. I mean, there are all these things happening. For example, the air is clearer, animals are walking through towns, right?
Yes.
Pollution has gone down. In some ways, COVID is telling, I mean, if you want to be spiritual about it, COVID is nature saying to us, listen, I'm going to give you a 1-year period to prepare for a 100-year period. Because when climate change hits you, it's going to be a lot worse than this. So here's your practice. Go.
Putting in that perspective is very like clear, as you say, because it seems like some kind of sign that we need to take care before it's too late. So it is like a good trial for us if we want to like to continue as humankind, as you say, from the spiritual side.
That's right. I think that's what's happening,
Yes, completely agree with you, Sanjay Sarma. So before finishing, Sanjay, could you tell me which are like your top 3 favorite books?
I mean, I read books that are, I obviously read a lot of technical books. I won't bore you with those. I read big books on innovation. I won't bore you with those. But,
it's okay. You can also say, because at the end, by your side, you also have a very good book that at the end, I would like to give you like a brief like summary about it.
Yeah, I like a book called Catch-22 by Joseph Heller.
Catch-22?
Yeah, Catch-22. It's a sort of a book about World War II, and it's a very absurd book, but it's also philosophical in its own way,
okay.
Right? And so that's Catch-22. I also, when I was a young man, I read a book called the Papillon.
Papillon?
It's by a guy called, I think the author's name is Henri Charrière.
Okay.
And it's a journey of a man in the West Indies. And it was a very tough book that shows you that you've got to survive somehow. He's not a nice guy. He's sent to prison, but it shows toughness. And that to me was very interesting. And the third book is by Gandhi.
Okay, great.
It's called My Experiments with Truth.
So that will be your top 3 recommendation for us. So I'm going to Google right now in order to consult them, because I must confess that I have not read them yet.
And by the way, you asked me earlier about the 3 IoTs. I didn't actually answer your question.
Yes, please.
The 3 IoTs are the Internet of Things, the intelligence of things, and the innovation of things. That's one way to look at it. And the reason I said that it's the humanity of things is right now, we are focusing on all 3. We're using the internet, we're using we're trying to use intelligence of things in a way to help us all out as a society and humanity, right?
Yes.
And finally, the innovation of things, same thing. So it's a sort of a strange world we're in, where we're trying to use every tool we have as humanity to survive this crazy time.
Yes, and at the end, that is important because I will put like a full recommendation, like your book. So I will also put in the brief summary about
Okay,
this
very
video.
kind. Thank you.
I will put it in the fourth like recommendation for everyone of us, so we can
Very kind.
understand about the three OITs. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank
And
you.
just for complete it, if you can choose or if you can pick just one advice for any of your family that will be so important for you, what would it be that advice?
The advice is be smart, be intelligent, but the most important thing is be strong.
Completely agree. Just because at the end we need to focus. I think it comes to the first comment that you say. We need to get to know first ourselves, so we can be stronger and we can like respond to the external conditions, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Well, thank you, Sanjay Sarma. It was a pleasure. I think that it was maybe some kind of like a different interview. I completely appreciate your time in your agenda. But I would like to say once again that after everything that we have already lived, I think there are some very good like lesson learned that we can get from all of this, right? So I would like to appreciate your time, and I would like to recognize once again as a very like down-to-earth leader and as a great teacher. So I hope
Thank
to
you
see
very much, Louis.
I
Thank
hope
you.
to see you in the next innovation courses in the MIT. So
Very
it was
good.
a pleasure. You're very funny. Sorry. I was forgetting one question.
Yeah.
I think everyone needs to know. Not because you are a teacher that you have to be very serious, but I remember that in the classroom, you were always having a big smile and a positive attitude. So can you please tell me which is your secret in order to have always this good attitude and positivism?
Well, I mean, I think, first of all, I think that if you get too serious, you get in your own way. You know,
Yes.
one way to be creative is to have a sense of humor. Just with life, with everything, a sense of humor is a great defense mechanism. It makes us much better at everything we do. But the other thing is, if one is curious, then you always have something to look forward to. I'm curious about how you're doing, Louis. You know, I'm curious about what's happening in different parts of the world. So I think some combination of humor and curiosity are make everyone positive, my view. So
Well, thank you so much, Sanjay Sarma. It was a pleasure. So I'm not saying goodbye. I'm just going to say see you maybe next November.
right.
I hope that everything gets like normal by those times. So once again, thank you so much. It was my pleasure, Sanjay Sarma.
Thank you, Louis.